Hey folks, let me know if this is working. I'm trying a different way of doing my feed, so I will need help to make sure that it works right. Um, so everything looks good on my end. I'll tell you how I have this rigged up in a second if it works. Uh, Turn it on my phone as well, make sure it's all working. I tested it earlier today, but you know how things happen when you test it. Go to, when you try to go live, sometimes it doesn't work. So, let me know if you guys can hear me and everything. So, hey, Motion VFX, cool. I'm glad. I'm glad. I was really worried. Let me know if you see uh, this like cursor shows up. This I'll tell you guys why this is happening, but this is going to be cool if it works. So I'm going to turn on this. You guys see that? Let me know if you see resolve in there. Is I wanted to kind of show this stuff in Resolve if we have this all working properly. My latency is a little low, or I mean it's a little slow for me, but yeah, this is what I got. So let me know if you see that because it'll be cool to show some stuff in Resolve. Cool. All right. So cool. That's awesome. Okay, so that concludes the test for this evening. Thank you everybody for participating. I will do my best not to have this cursor show up because the way that I have this rigged up right now is that I was having some issues with the stream last time, and I think I know what it was. What I think happened was I had the camera going into the YouTube live stream, and this is with the Fuji app. And I think that it was trying to get like, I think that what was happening was the live stream was attempting to send you guys way too much information, so people were having issues with buffering. So I'm hoping that this fixes a problem. I have it rigged up where the camera is going into Zoom, and then I have OBS capturing from Zoom. So that's where you're getting the picture. Then I have my microphone set up. So that's going into OBS. And then I created another screen in there so you guys can see Resolve. So I'm hoping that this fixes any of the issues that I was having. So if people are still having buffering problems or other issues watching the stream, please let me know because I will try to do what I can to fix it. This was what I could figure out to get this to work properly. So please let me know if this is not working right and I can look for the next time on how to fix it. Also, a disclaimer, we're getting a thunderstorm right now. It doesn't look like it's horrible. I think we might be at the end of it, but if for some reason the feed like totally cuts out or my power goes, that would be the reason. So, yeah, so you guys will periodically see my cursor. I don't know how to get rid of that right now. So you'll see when I'm actually looking at things. Like I have my notes that I look at, and I'll be looking for other information and things. So if you see the cursor, that's why it's there. And I apologize for that, but I don't know how to have it not appear while getting the feed from Zoom. It's really, really strange. So I hope everybody's having a good week. This has been a very weird week for me, but hope everyone's doing okay. No, like my view of the storm is not very good. All you're gonna see is like trees out of my window, like behind me over here. Like that's pretty much all you would see. I think Emotion VFX. I think I saw some images of a lightning storm where you are, and that was pretty cool. I've never been able to capture lightning, but then again, I haven't like tried. I don't even know how you do that, but that's pretty cool. Maybe just record video. Um, is this a parallel universe? It's the mirror dimension. What do you mean? Am I backwards? Let me see. Let me see. No, it shouldn't be backwards. I'm not sure what you mean. Image is flipped. What? Nuh-uh. Come on. You're kidding me. Let me check. Image is flipped. Let me see. Oh, come on, ads. Why do people put ads on their live streams? Come on. Image isn't flipped. What are you talking about? Image is not flipped. Photographic elements. Come on, man. Was it? If the window was on the opposite side, I think it was a problem. I think it's always been over there, but not sure. Yeah, like I said before, if you see my cursor, it's because I don't know how to not have it appear when I'm using OBS right now in the way I have it set up. But that's the way it is. Yeah, so how are you guys? How's your week? How's everything going? I hope everything's going okay for you. No, I'm not in a different room. I don't know if it was flipped. I don't know why it was flipped. I just know that that's what this is showing. So I can't really do anything. Yeah, if it's flipped, I'll have to figure out how to deal with that another time. I wonder if something happened with the resizing that made it happen that way, but sorry about that. Yeah, I will get that figured out next time. So, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know how to fix it right now. So we'll fix that for next time. So if it is flipped, thank you for telling me, and I will get it fixed. Um, I don't think that the other image isn't flipped. I know that for sure. I know that for sure. Okay. So let's mess around. Um, so this week, as is normal in the beginning of the stream, because we're still waiting for people to arrive, I'll just talk about whatever. So usually I talk about movies and shows and stuff. So this week, there was so during the movie nights that I had this week, it was Friday and Saturday, and on Friday, I tried. I tried and I missed actually. So the first night on Friday, we watched a couple of musicals. I missed the first one, and it wasn't the one that I thought was going to play first. I was trying to avoid Xanadu, and Xanadu ended up being the second movie. So I was a bit disappointed in myself. The first movie was The Apple, which I love. It's a very funny, yeah, unintentionally funny, but it's a musical that is just outrageous, and I totally missed it. I thought that they were going to be playing Xanadu first. So then I watched Xanadu. I've seen that movie, oh, yeah, I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times I've seen Xanadu. Maybe 4 times, 5 times, probably more. I'm not sure. But yeah, Xanadu, you don't need to see it. There's some really cool stuff in it that I like, but it's mostly boring. And then the lead character he just sucks. Like, he's a bad person. I don't like him at all. He like, yeah, it's hard to explain. You just need to watch the movie and you'll understand what I mean. Like, I really don't like it when I have a movie that I'm watching and the lead character is just not likable. it makes the whole movie not work for me. So unless they're supposed to be not likable, but usually even then, if it's like an anti-hero, there's something about them that you like that's interesting. But in Xanadu, there's just nothing about him that I like. So that was unfortunate. But the second night, we watched movies about like evil cats. And the first one was Uninvited, and that was hilarious. Like that movie, it's really cheap and it's terrible and silly. Like it's like a cat. There's like a cat, and then there's a cat that's in the cat. That's like an evil cat or something, and it's a cat that was created in a laboratory or something, and it's like radioactivity made it into this weird monster thing. And it's almost like if you've seen Alien, which most of you I'm sure have. In Alien, there's like an alien head inside the alien, right? It's like kind of weird. So in Uninvited, imagine that, but the evil cat that's in the cat can like actually come completely out of the skin of the cat. But what's so funny about it is that when that happens, the cat that they use is like a stuffed animal cat, and it's obvious. It's like a cheap stuffed animal cat. It's really funny. Um, Highly recommended. Uninvited. Very very funny movie. Obviously not intentional. And I don't really want to give a lot of stuff away about that. It's wonderful. And then we watched another movie called House that I didn't like. House was not. It was. Let me just put it this way. It's a. I would classify it as a Japanese experimental horror film, and I respect all the risks that it takes, but I can't stand watching it. And it's because it's so frantic in the way that it's cut, and it's just all over the place with its tone, and the style is just all over the place. And it's actually one of those movies that's so stylistic that I can't stand watching it. If you watch the movie, you'll understand. Um, uh, Steve, the movie you're talking about, I think, is called Sleepers or Sleepwalkers, something like that. Um, yeah, I think it's called Sleepwalkers, something like that. But yeah, that was pretty great. And then so we're my wife and I are looking for a show to watch. So I wanted to watch The Witcher again because we're reading the books, and I really like the show, and I'm waiting for the next season. So I wanted to see how the books, like I played the game, like I played The Witcher 3, and then I've read we've read one of the books and getting our way through the second book, and I wanted to see how the writing in the books were reflected in the show, and the show is wonderful. Like it's different, but it's different in a lot of good ways. So yeah, The Witcher. If you haven't seen the show, I think it's wonderful. Let's see. We watched. My wife actually wanted to watch The King's Speech, and that's actually one of my videos. If you haven't seen it yet, it's where I talk about shallow depth of field and how like the overuse of that. Where like, and this is the video that I made was in response to seeing so many people tell others that the way you get a cinematic look is by this shallow depth of field thing, and that's why you need larger sensors, and that's why you need really fast glass and all those things. When in that movie, there's a lot of use of deeper depth of field that looks really, really good, and I still see that. It was wonderful, very, very good film. But one thing that I have to say about it, and I believe we watched it on Amazon Prime, there's another thing that I've been talking about, which is the limitations at the end of the pipe. So you have like, pre-production, you have production, then you have post-production. But the other thing is the delivery of your product, right? So one of the, uh, issues with King's Speech is actually the grade, or however it's delivered to. I think it was Amazon Prime, and then they broadcast. There's some issues with it. There is noise that shows up in particular scenes that I didn't see on the Blu-ray, and then red gets like oversaturated, like it's clipping, obviously clipping, and there's noise patterns in it. Um, so I'm not sure what's going on from the delivery standpoint, but it's try watching it if you could. Like if I'm totally wrong about that, like if you're watching it and it doesn't look like that from yours, I wonder what the issue is. Because on ours, like I could see it. There was like noise around eyes in some shots, and then others didn't have it, and I don't remember ever seeing that before. So it was a little disappointing, the delivery of it. And it's kind of what I've been saying before about it's hard to make judgments on movies or these other products when you have it delivered in a way that kind of already cripples it. Even though King's Speech is this wonderful, film, it's expertly done. There's all these technical issues probably with the way that it's delivered and handled before that delivery. I'm not sure what it is that they're doing that's making it look like that, but that can't be the way that it looked originally. And I know that because I've seen it. I've seen it before without those problems. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the issue is there. Um, so you'll probably notice that I'm a little slow on getting some content out, and part of that is that I have some other projects that I'm working on. Like work has picked up a lot over the past few weeks for me. Um, and like I have my normal work, and then I have some more work on top of that that I've been taking in. And we just got approval for another larger project that I'm going to be working with DJ actually on. He's in the chat. And I kind of wanted to ask him again, how, if you can just, like, I'm being a little vague because I don't know I don't want to talk about specifics of the project, but DJ, if you could just, explain to everyone, briefly as you can, how that project came to be, and what you did to really get it. And the thing about this is that it's actually working with a pretty well-known company. The product is basically a marketing video that's like a documentary-esque kind of thing, about a game. And I think that it's going to end up looking awesome. And yeah, so I don't want to tell you guys how it happened, but I'd rather him tell you so you know that it's just not me making stuff up, about like how I get work. Because how we got this job is very much the same way that I get pretty much every job I've ever gotten. So maybe he can just explain real quick, how that happened. Um, so yeah, and then the other thing, and I'll talk more about this later on in the stream. I just want to make sure that DJ can explain briefly as he can how that happened. Um, so that we can get that down. And then later I'll talk about some other things, some of the other projects that I'm going to be working on. I have been in talks with some people locally about housing, and they are in need of video production for selling these big homes. And the way that happened, like even talking about getting this work, isn't because anybody saw a website or a reel. I was just talking to them. I talked to them. They came by to do a quote for fixing my roof, and we just were talking about things. He had a drone. He was flying the drone to look at things, and we're just kind of discussing drones. And I was like, yeah, man, you can get paid a lot of money to fly drones for videography on a bunch of things like real estate and all that. And so while we were talking, I just mentioned that I do video production. I am fully capable of doing, video production to create marketing videos for housing developments or whatever it was, and they were actually a builder. So, that's how that happened. And then with another set of projects that looks like it's becoming more and more of a reality, And again, this is on top of the work that I already do. Um, I created a recruitment video, and that has been passed around by a bunch of people at the college or university, I should say, and they're all talking about it. Like it basically went from the uh, professors, and then it's now up to people or heads of departments who want videos done now that are similar to what I did, and they're reaching out to see how much it would cost and all those things. So when I tell you guys that the when I tell you guys that the word of mouth thing really gets you more possibilities for work, I'm not kidding about that. Like, I'm not trying to tell you to, like, I'm not saying to cripple yourselves. Like, I'm not telling you that creating a website is bad. I'm not telling you that having a reel and doing that kind of promotional stuff or working on like just your skills is a bad thing. What I am trying to say is that your personal skills and your ability to talk to people, and not only that, but get your work seen by the right people, and especially if the people who bought the product know other people who hold the purse strings, those are the people you need to hit if you need work or if you want work, because they will say, oh look, I didn't even know we needed this kind of thing before, and I trust that this person can do a good job, because why would my colleague have used them? So then that builds your client list. And the kinds of people that you want are people who have money, and they control the purse strings. Those are the people that you need to really get to look at your work. Having a website and all that, and going on to some of these other websites for contractors and all that, it can work. You'll get more people coming in. My fear about any of that, though, is that sometimes, and this is usually most of the time, you'll get people who really want to try to bottom line you. They're going to want the cheapest possible. These are sometimes people who don't they don't understand the process. They don't understand who you are. They don't have other people who've worked with you. So it's kind of like working with strangers. Whereas if you have a much closer knit group of people who are all movers and shakers, and you all trust each other, you can have a better working relationship. So that's kind of my thing, and DJ's kind of talking about it right now. He says, and this is on the project that we're going to be working on. He says, I was approached by a mid-level manager to work on a project which is a documentary style video about a game based on a recent AAA animation title. This project apparently will be seen by the film's above line production people, which is huge. Like the group that we're working with, like the video will be seen by very important people. Again, they're the ones who need to see the kind of work that we're going to be doing. So it's a really good opportunity for us. And again, it's just kind of another example of how when you have a very strong group of people that you're in contact with, it doesn't matter really what field they're working in. Everybody needs video production at some point, because they need marketing. They need instructional video. They need learning videos. They need I don't know, what did I just do this week? I had a set of training videos that I had to watch for, I can't even remember what the thing was. It was for some legal stuff in California. So our field, video production is it's big, and it's important, and people need it. That's the thing. Like, people need it. And do that. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that all makes sense to you guys. I want you to know that that's more of what I'm going to be kind of pushing you guys all to do. Get into contact with the people in your community. That's how you're going to get work. You can do work on a reel and all those things all you want, but at the end of the day, the right people need to see your work. The right people need to greenlight the project. The right people need to trust you, all those things. And often, when you have more of a personal understanding between each other, you have more of a personal relationship between people, you treat each other better, and you're less likely to screw each other over. And in our line of work, that's really important. I was going to talk about all this stuff later, but I'm just going to talk about it now. What I want to express to you is this warning, I guess, also at the same time that all this is, that I'm talking about this. When you're looking at work, like most of us are artists. We're not like, we don't see our work, the majority of us, we don't see the work that we do like a typical entrepreneur is going to see creating a business. A lot of entrepreneurs, at least in the States, they treat opening a business and running a business like you're a wild animal, and you're either prey or you're the predator. That's how they see things. And just to kind of bring it home with something that a VFX supervisor said, he's quoted as saying, he said, if I don't bankrupt a visual effects company, I haven't done my job. So that's how a lot of people kind of see art. And they'll see your art as a means of helping their own business, and they'll see you as prey, and they're a predator. They're going to try to like get as much as they can out of you so that they can make a profit off of your work. Okay? So as artists, because we usually don't think this way, we're not really trained in school, especially to think like this. And then when you get out, you get out and you start working with people, you learn this over time, that you need to protect yourself. And the more of a partnership you have with the people that you're working with, the less likely they're going to look at you as just somebody who needs to be exploited. Okay? So that's another thing that I'm trying to say is when you kind of put yourself out there and you're a contractor and you're trying to just get work coming to you from strangers, especially some of them, like I said, are going to be looking for bottom line kind of stuff. They just want the cheapest possible, and they are going to make you work for pennies when you should be making hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars for the work that you're doing. So I just want you all to understand that, and that's why I kind of keep pushing like the way that I do things. Like I like it because I don't really have to worry about getting screwed over by people, not as much as a lot of people do. So I hope you guys understand that. Alrighty. So we're about 30 minutes in. I will be talking more about that later and answering questions. So please have questions for me so that I can answer them while we do this. But and also thanks DJ for explaining, briefly how that's going to be. Maybe eventually we'll be able to give more information about it. But I don't know. It's one of those things where if like when you're working with clients or you're working with certain companies, like you just keep it, on the down low. So we have to be vague on purpose. But it's a cool project, and I'm excited to do it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I hope that this works properly because I did do a test on this, and it should work out right. What I'm going to do now is I want to talk about the Generation 5 color science from DaVinci, from Blackmagic Design and the implementation in DaVinci Resolve. So they meaning Blackmagic Design just released a beta for Windows finally that has the Ursa Mini 12K compatibility and all that. So you can now, if you have a Windows machine, you get to work with that footage. I actually was unable to. I was getting all kinds of errors with the 12K footage. So I don't know what the heck is going on. but I'm gonna try again, probably tomorrow or the next day to try to figure out what's happening. Basically, the playback was not working right with the 12K footage. I had no problem with Pocket 6K, Pocket 4K footage or any of that, but the 12K was not working. Like when I would go in between different resolutions, if I'd go into 8K, then go to HD, then go to 4K, then go to HD, what happened was it would give me a GPU memory full, and then it would turn the screen black. And even if I was going back to lower resolutions, it wouldn't come back. So I don't know what the problem is there, but that's not good. And it, so I just don't know what the problem is with that. But and then the footage that I got, that was like the 12K footage. Um, yeah, I got to see a little bit of it, but yeah, I wish that sometimes there was more stuff. But I can tell you that they're definitely pushing the newer footage, showing that Gen 5 does a much better job with gamut clipping issues, which I'll talk about. Um, so yeah, yeah. So let's talk about Gen 5. So the reason why Gen 5 color science was necessary, there was apparent recording from the camera that was out of the Gen 4 gamut. I think that was the major problem, because the information, like when you capture stuff with the camera, the color science that you go into, the gamut needs to be large enough, and then if it's not large enough for whatever's being recorded, it needs to map it properly. So what was happening was, with Gen 4, if you use a Pocket 4K or the 6K, you saw this problem. Even in the older cameras, you would see this issue with reds and blues, LED lights, anything like that, where the colors would be clipped and they would have this really ugly, muddy look, and there wasn't much you could really do unless you started transforming it into different color spaces, at least from my experience. So that's how I got rid of the problem. I'd have to use color space transforms to get rid of it. I would have to use Red IPP do mapping, easily took care of it. And those kinds of ways of dealing with it was not a problem. The other issue was that because of the way that the recording was, whatever you recorded in Gen 4, when you would try to go into aces, reds would kind of react unpredictably sometimes. Like I would have really bad noise issues with deeply saturated reds, even if they weren't like a tail light or anything like that. And then for LED lights and some things that were clipping, even if you had purple fringing, it would have this noise pattern that would turn into like these dark artifacts. So Aces was for me a no-go with the Pocket 4K. Like I wanted to use Aces with it for several projects, and I just couldn't use it because it wouldn't work. It would be totally unpredictable. And for me, I need my pipeline, my working pipeline, to be completely predictable and to work the exact same way every time. So I thought Aces could do that, but with this camera, it just wasn't working. And then the other thing was that if you use the Generation 4 color science, you probably found that the way that the tools worked was a little weird, especially if you're coming from using like red wide gamut RGB or Arilog C. Like I would rather work in Arilog C than Gen 4 because it usually would start with a pretty high ramp up into the highlights, and it wouldn't really level it off in a very nice way. That's the highlight roll off that everyone talks about. The thing is that you know, that's all usually, that's the highlight roll off and all those things are usually how data is interpolated in the pipeline, not necessarily like in the capture. So, you know, when people are complaining about highlight roll off and all those things, and then they were dumbfounded when someone figured out how to make the highlight roll off look better, that's not because of the camera, that's because of their skills or however they transform the footage. So my way of dealing with that was to transform into like an Arilog C gamma, or to use Red IPP2, which did the job just fine. So those were the issues. So what did Gen 5 do? So far, I've used it for like one whole day. So I'm still going to be, using it and figuring things out. But this is this is what I found out so far. In the Gen 5, you have, in my opinion, better and more predictable gamut mapping to avoid those highly saturated color clipping issues that we had before. So it does deal with that. And I'll show that. Hopefully it'll work when I try to do it live now. But I will show how it works and what Gen 4 was doing, especially when it comes to aces. Reds are different. I did see a video where someone was saying that they preferred the way that Gen 4 rendered reds, but I can't disagree more, because I don't like it when the initial render from my camera starts out in something that I have to correct. So, and I'll show you how it kind of is annoying. There are ways to fix it, and I've shown that on my channel, but with Gen 5, you don't really have to do a whole lot of that, which is really nice. In fact, I didn't have to do any of it. And lastly, much better, actually not lastly, one thing before, sorry. The control with using contrast feels very different in Gen 5 than Gen 4. Like, you'll see when I go back and forth between Gen 4 and Gen 5, how the initial contrast looks, and even when you pull the controls, they will affect the footage a little differently. So I think that Gen 5 is a lot more, if you like going straight from like the raw tab and doing everything in there, Gen 5 is going to be way better for you. I can promise you that. And if you like doing the manual controls even in the node tree, if you like doing everything manually instead of using color space transforms, you're going to like doing it with Gen 5 a lot more than Gen 4. And lastly, the results from using aces are way better in Gen 5 than Gen 4, and I will show that. So what does the Gen 5 color science not do? It does not increase the dynamic range of your camera, even though people think that. It doesn't do that. It's just, all it does is change the interpretation of the data coming from the recording. Okay, so when you record RAW and you put it in Gen 4, Gen 5, it's not like your camera all of a sudden got more dynamic range, is what I'm saying. All that happened is that it's interpreting, especially the highlight information, in a different way, so it just like looks better. It's displayed better, in my opinion. And then the reds, it's the same thing. It's not like it has a higher gamut or something. It's just the recorded gamut's going to be the same, most likely. And you'll see that even with my older footage that I shot with the Pocket 4K, you're not going to see that. You're going to see the differences, and it's not because the recording was any different. The recording is the same. It was done with the Gen 4 in the camera, but because of the way that RAW and Blackmagic RAW, in addition, are recorded, it's not like the Generation 4 color science is baked in like that. Okay, the Gen 4, Gen 5 selections in Resolve are just interpreting it differently. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to try to show this stuff. And what I'm going to do, in addition, is I'm going to have this running on my phone so that I can make sure that you guys are seeing the right thing. So, let's see here. Turn on Resolve. And hopefully this is going to work. So, let's see here. Take a drink while this is... Okay, so you guys should see You guys should see DaVinci Resolve here. So this clip here, all I did was take a quick grab of my computer, and this is the inner workings. So you're seeing its insides, and these are LEDs. So here's Gen 4, okay? And I'll zoom in because I'm not sure how bad the compression is going to be, but this is the real trouble area right here. So here's Gen 4, and even toggling on and off highlight recovery, you're going to see that there's no real, I mean, this doesn't really fix any of the issues, right? So if I pull back the saturation, there's like these hard edges, and it doesn't look as, you know, obviously bad and noisy, but it's not great. So I'll pull back the contrast to 1, and we'll bring the saturation to 1, okay? So when we pull this, you can see how bad it gets, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is switch to Gen 5, and you can see how much of a drastic difference this is. I mean, if you look down here at the scopes, you can see how big of a difference Gen 4 to Gen 5 is. The highlights just go way up. You know, it maps everything up to the top here. I mean, this is with the contrast up, but you can see how it maps everything. And then with Gen 5, it squishes everything down. So it's a lot flatter in the starting point, which means that, you know, you're expected to do, I guess, more work. But I mean, as you saw before, when I increased the contrast, there was this horrible clipping in the gamut here that I would usually have to fix. So, you know, even if I go pretty crazy with it, it's only until I start breaking it that you really see these problems. So this is a huge benefit, okay? Huge benefit, okay? And the red, let's see what the red here. Gen 4, see this weird, this red didn't clip as badly as I've seen, but I have another shot that will show it. There is this fringe here, this red fringe that you can see, but it's, you know, in Gen 5, it just gets rid of any of those problems. And I can increase the contrast, and I can make it where those do come back eventually, but only when I, you know, intentionally am breaking it. So this is kind of what I mean when I say that the Gen 5 is a lot more, I think, user-friendly for people who are used to, you know, grading and log and all that. It just seems like it makes more sense to do it this way with Generation 5 than it is with Gen 4. Gen 4 just feels so limiting. And that's why I wouldn't even do any grading in here. So, okay, let me just check the chat real quick. Yeah, okay, so you guys can see everything. And that's not a lightsaber. So, okay, cool. So this is, yeah, so, you know, you can see the difference. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the difference in ACEs. Actually, real quick, what I'll do is show this one. Okay, so let me, okay, here's taillights. Okay, so we're going to go Blackmagic Design, Gamma will be Film, and we'll go to Gen 4. So just, I'm going to zoom way in here so you can see the difference here. So here, you know, if we do anything with the contrast, it's pretty, you know, the red is still this ugly blotchy red, and when we go to Gen 5, it mutes it. So I'll bring up the contrast, but even when we bring up the contrast, and again, I don't know how obvious this is going to be on the stream, but as you can see, well, as I can see, I'll say that, the red does not get as poorly clipped as what it appears to be in the Gen 4. Even if I pull back the contrast, you can still see these like magenta, obvious issues with the gamut, okay? Okay, so also what I'll do, bring back the saturation here. let me just make sure that this actually does what I think. Yeah, so we'll bring up the contrast. So you can even see if you take footage of like red taillights, you'll see that there's some dark spots that start coming in where that red starts to clip, even if you bring the saturation all the way down in the gamma controls. But if you go to Gen 5 and bring up the contrast, you're less likely to see it. Like I don't see the dark lines going along here, okay? All right, so again, I'm not sure how obvious this is gonna be through the stream. This is my first time trying to do this, but I figured a visual made more sense than trying to explain it to you. So now what I'm gonna do, check the chat real quick, make sure that everybody's seeing this stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is the beta. This is in the beta of DaVinci Resolve. So if you're not seeing it in your current version, that's why. So yeah. Yeah. See this right here? This is where I would pick, Gen 4, Gen 5. I think it's grayed out in the current version on Gen 4 only for like the Pocket 4K and 6K, but in this new version I can go back and forth between these two. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how ACES behaves differently. And actually both of these are good, but I'm going to start with this one. So we'll go put the contrast back. Okay, so let's throw in ACES transform, and we're going to go from CCT to Rec 709, and then in here I'm going to choose ACES AP1, and then the gamma will be ACES CCT. Okay, so you see all this crap, this ugly blue mess. So this is why I didn't want to use ACES with the Pocket 4K. I would see this kind of problem, okay? And if we did the same thing in, not my face, this one. If we do the same thing here, we'll go to Gen 4, use ACES and ACES. Go to the taillights. You'll see this horrible red mess, and I hate this. Like, anytime I see this kind of thing in a video or a film or whatever you want to call your product or anybody else's product, it just tells me that there's a problem, okay, this kind of red. So how you can really look at this is by bringing the saturation down at certain points in the node tree to see what's happening. So if I zoom in here, and again, please forgive me if you can't see it as clearly in the stream because of the compression or whatever. I'm doing my best here, but maybe if I go, no, full screen actually won't do it because of pop out. But this black mess here is the gamut clipping before it even gets into the node tree. Before, basically, okay, whatever's happening here is causing a gamut issue before I can even do anything about it. Okay, that's what's happening here. But now watch what happens when I choose Gen 5. Boom, it's gone. See that? Isn't that wonderful? It's totally gone. Okay, like this is great. So again, just to go back, Gen 4, you see these dark spots. These, whenever you're looking for out of gamut issues with your footage or just in your pipeline, whenever you see these dark blotches, that's where it is, okay? So exists in Gen 4, go to Gen 5, and it's gone. Now, as I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, well, okay, but does the color look different or does it look the same? How about like how it works with ACES? Is it the same way? So we'll reset this, okay? So this is more of a wide view of it, okay? We'll go from Gen 4 to Gen 5. Okay, so, you know, there are probably nuanced things that are going on with Gen 4 and Gen 5 that I haven't quite witnessed yet. In Gen 5, I've noticed skin tones look a slight bit different. When you're going with aces, they look slightly different. And then, but the biggest issue of aces looks like it's solved in Gen 5, which is wonderful. So if you're an aces grader, you're going to be very happy with Gen 5. You're going to be very happy with this. So I think that they were thinking clearly when they were doing this. So, let's see if the same thing holds true with this horrible mess, right? So let's look at this. Again, same setup. So we're just going to swap to Gen 5. Look at that. Fixed. Shabams. Kablooey. Shapoopy. Whatever you want to say. That problem is fixed, ladies and gents. So I'm very happy about that. Just look at that. Look at that. Wonderful. Check the chat. Okay. Yeah, the recording is in Blackmagic RAW with the Pocket 4K. If you're using the beta, all I'm going to say is if you're using the beta for real work, don't do that. Okay, just use it to play around and all that kind of stuff. Use the actual studio versions because there might be bugs in the betas that you don't know about. Okay. So this is huge, in my opinion, if you're an ACES person. So the kick in the balls about this is that I guess it's okay for me to say that. Is that if I use a color space transform node, there's no Gen 5 selectable here. I've got, Gen 1, Gen 3, Gen 4, Canon Cinema Gamut. Like, I'm not seeing any Generation 5. So that's a little disappointing because if you wanted to go, let's say you shot ProRes and you want to take your ProRes file and go from Gen 4 to Gen 5, I'm not seeing how to do that with a color space transform right now. So that's quite a bit disappointing in my opinion. And this is the beta, so obviously they're going to add that, right? Like they have to. I haven't checked. Let me see. Color managed input is Generation 5 in here. Gen 5. I do not see it. Let's use separate and see if it exists. That's the Gamma, Rec 709. Let's see here. Blackmagic, Gen 5, nope. Doesn't exist in here. So that's a little disappointing. So I would really like it if they added, Gen 5 to here and Gen 4 so we can go back and forth between them with ProRes files. Like I said, a little disappointing that we don't have that, but I'm sure they're going to add it at some point. And I'm sure that they're going to add it in the cameras with firmware to allow the Generation 5 setting with some of the older cameras. I'm sure of it. Like, I can't imagine them not doing it. So this is actually kind of a problem because if you're used to doing the red IPP2 mapping like I do, it doesn't really work the same way with Gen 5. It will look different because the color space transforms are not going to be really correct. The colors are different. So yeah, a little disappointing on that. But so I'm going to show you something that you might find interesting. So here's with Gen 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw an ARRI LUT in here. So if you remember before, what we used to do, if you're familiar with my videos at least, is that when we had, you know, Gen 4, we had Blackmagic Design color here, and we had the film gamma. What we would do is we would choose, this is Pocket 4K, so we'd go from the Pocket 4K, and then we'd go into ARRI, and then we'd have the LUT, and that would give us, you know, these results, okay? If we did the same thing here, we get these results. Okay, so this was kind of another way to get kind of more into the gamma that is a bit more workable, and you basically, you know, do your work in here. Okay, you have your, oh, I forgot to put the LUT in here. I'll do that. Okay, so and then you'd like do your work all in here. Go Gen 4. What did I do here? Why does this look weird? Anyway, so the interesting thing is, oh, that's why. Hold on a second. Fix this. Color space transform. Come on now. Log C to Rec. 709. Do that, and then we go from Pocket 4K. ARRI. Okay, now it looks right. So when we would do this, we would then get, you know, this kind of look, and then we do grading here. So what's interesting is when we go straight into this LUT from Gen 4, it looks like this, and if we go from Gen 5, it looks more like this. So just interesting how different the LUTs work, and then you can kind of, you know, do whatever you want to do in here. So just interesting how even a LUT like this, compared to this procedure, will give you completely different results with Gen 5 versus Gen 4. So you can see how different those results are. So it is a pretty big change from the previous color science. I think it's a really good one. Again, the problems in here are taken care of. Let's actually, this is again with just a straight LUT being used, the ARRI Rec. 709 LUT that comes with the program. Look at the look at the difference. So when you put the LUT straight in, we'll bring the contrast back. Look at that, and then look at that. Even if I was to add some contrast here, you know, it doesn't end up looking like the Gen 4 messy junk like this that you usually have to correct. Okay, so pretty cool. Pretty cool. Go back to me. Okay. Let's see questions. All right. So I'm going to scroll up so I can see here. Yeah, cheap ass reviews. I'm mirrored right now. I'm doing a different way of running the stream, so if it looks different, that's why. I didn't account for the mirroring thing that was going on, so I'll fix it for the next time, I guess. If you see a cursor, it's because of the way that I'm capturing the footage. It makes it where the cursor is visible. Yeah, and I now I'm able, like, I'm learning more and more and more about how to do this live streaming thing. So I've got screen capture available. So if you want to use Gen 5, the way to do it is you have to download the newest beta that Blackmagic Design released. And then over here where it says color science, you'll be able to select the different color sciences. That's how you do it. MotionVX firmware or software update of Resolve. Yeah, update to the beta of Resolve. They just released the beta for Windows users, like I think yesterday, might be the day before. I don't remember. Yeah, the new Gen 5 fixes a lot of problems. Let me actually show you guys where you might disagree that you like Gen 5. Okay, so you'll have to look at my face for this, because this is actually one of the trouble shots that I had. So let's actually disable. So we will use Blackmagic Design film. Actually, no, we're gonna do this through Aces. We're gonna do this through Aces because this is where it becomes really obvious what's happening. So we'll go Aces AP1, Aces CCT. Okay, and then we're gonna deactivate these. Okay. So this is just like a quick medicine dropper white balance on this mug here. Yeah, that's all that is. So if you look at this mug, not my face of the mug, but this mug here, this red mug, I'm going to zoom in a bit. One of the issues I was having was that the saturation of this thing was really causing some issues in Aces. It looks like in the new beta, there's less of that issue even with Gen 4. But if I switch to Gen 5, just watch how the color changes for this thing. See that? Okay, so it becomes a lot more muted. Okay, we'll do that again. Here's, zoom in a bit. Here's what this looks like in Gen 4. And then in Gen 5. So it's quite a bit muted, okay? And this is a complaint that some people I've seen are having about the new color science, is that it kind of is too aggressive with reds, and it makes something that should be more naturally saturated in a red color to be overly mapped to Rec 709, if that makes sense. So I can understand why some people might complain about this, but I don't really complain about it because I can kind of adjust it if I want to. So let's see. What were these? Hue versus hue, hue versus saturation. Yeah, that was a skin thing. So yeah, this was me just quickly taking care of this stuff. So we'll pull this. So, you know, if you want more saturation, you can always, you know, pull up saturation. It won't, you know, it's not like you're locked into a more muted red or something. Like you can push that value up if you want. Okay? Hope you guys can see that. Okay, here's before, very muted, and then after, it looks like this. Okay? So we'll just delete that. Okay, so again, just to show it again so you guys get an idea. Here's Gen 5. Okay, this is without this stuff in the middle. This is just white balance and then going straight from Aces into Rec 709. So that's what it looks like here. And then Gen 4, you have a much more saturated red here. I'd say that this is a lot closer to what it looks like in real life, but I'd rather have it start like, you know, considering all the other issues that the reds cause, I'd rather it start here and then deal with it later. And then here is, you know, my quick grade that I did with it. And this is using the LMT from Bald Avenger. So strongly recommend Bald Avenger's stuff. His Aces tools are awesome. And then it also has a soft clip here, which is really nice. So highly recommended for you to use Bald Avenger tools. And we'll turn that off. Okay. Um, let's look here. Fixes a lot of issues at Gen 5. Yes, it does. Newt says, random question. Do you prefer denoise in Resolve or in-camera denoise? I don't typically have noise issues, but I prefer not to buy an additional plugin if I don't have to. Why do you need to get a new Why do you need to get a plugin? That would be my question. If you're using the Premiere and After Effects bundle, you should be able to deal with your noise reduction that way. Um, uh, so there's that, and then in Resolve, look, I can just show you in Resolve, right? This is so cool. Go to Resolve. So if you're using Resolve, I'll do it in this node. You go to, where is it? Noise reduction here. And then you've got temporal noise reduction and spatial noise reduction. So you have all the tools you really need, in my opinion, in Resolve, where you should not really need to get another program. Like you should not need to buy a plugin. So, you can use all this stuff here. I'm not going to do it because I don't know how it's going to work with the stream or slow down the computer or whatever right now. I just haven't done it while live streaming. But there's all kinds of things that you can do in Resolve to denoise your footage. If you don't have DaVinci Resolve, which does cost some money, if you get a camera, if you get one of their cameras, you get the software for free. So I do recommend that. Pocket 4K is very, very inexpensive, and you can get the Resolve bundle with it. So. And then you're asking, do I prefer denoising in camera or in Resolve, or I guess just in post. If you're doing work that requires very, very fast turnarounds, it might make sense to do denoising in camera. Okay, so it's really like a depends thing. If you're doing work that you get to spend longer in post-production, doing the color grade and all that kind of stuff, you should do it later. So narrative, for example, if you're doing narratives, you want to do that denoising in post, honestly. Like you do want to have the control because you basically get to control how much denoising is done, and you can even select where you want it to be. So if you're only having noise issues in certain areas or in certain shots, then you don't have to denoise aggressively in shots that are, let's just say, shot adequately for the sensor. And then in other shots that are in situations where you couldn't really control the lighting or it was just underexposed or whatever, then you can denoise more aggressively there. So that's really my answer to it. It really depends on the product that you're making, how much time you have, and how much color grading you're going to do in post. For me, because I have the Pocket 4K and I shoot Blackmagic RAW, I'm going to be doing grading in post anyway. So because I'm going to do that, I just run a denoise pass in post. And usually with the Pocket 4K footage, or especially if you're doing Pocket 6K footage, since I do HD deliverables, the super sample from the Pocket 4K to HD is really good even without any denoising. And then for the Pocket 6K, especially if you're using that for HD, dude, like it is noise free. So unless you shoot incorrectly, in my opinion, if you like seriously underexpose your footage and you have all these problems with your footage, like that will, that will be something that you have to deal with. But generally, if you expose properly, especially for the native ISOs, you're not really going to have a whole lot of noise issues that you can't deal with pretty quickly. Generally, for the Pocket 4K, if you do a spatial noise reduction of a 2 and a 15, that should take care of most of your problems, in my opinion. The chroma noise seems to be worse than any of the luminoise. So, and then also it also depends on the camera, because some cameras have really good noise reduction algorithms that don't have a lot of macro blocking and other problems, but there are there are other cameras that are just awful. So it really, like I said, it really just depends. It depends on what you're doing, and the camera, and it's a bunch of things. So, and I've never bought a plugin to deal with noise. When I had noise issues previously, I'd use After Effects. The noise reduction in that was pretty bad, uh, because it was so slow. But with Resolve, it's pretty fast, so it's not really a big issue. The temporal noise reduction is where it can really slow down your machine. So, and I haven't found the need to use that much temporal noise reduction, except for situations that have uh, moire. I will use a temporal noise reduction and then a spatial noise reduction on top of that that deals with the problem pretty much without an issue. So, uh, how do you think, Raghav says, how do you think the highlight roll off in Gen 5 compared to Gen 4? The highlight roll off is the way that it's interpolated. I don't know if you're here later, but the way that the highlight roll off is interpolated in Gen 5 is a lot more gradual. It's more log like than in Gen 4. Gen 4 kind of spikes. And I've never really liked that about Gen 4. That's why I would use like an Arilog C map to kind of, make it easier to work with. But Gen 4 works a lot more like, if you've used like red wide gamut RGB and Log 3G10, like it works more like Log 3G10 or like Arilog C than it does Gen 4 or like regular Rec 7 and 9 footage. So I much, much prefer Gen 5 so far. I've only used it for like a day or so, so it's not like, I'm an expert on it. Windows users, of course, get this stuff later for Blackmagic products. I think they just seem to have like a weird partnership or something with Mac where they get things first, and they're always featured in their videos, which I don't get. Like, I'm not going to buy Mac products, but yeah, Gen 5 I think is much, much better. But again, just to be very clear, about what's going on. The Gen 5 and Gen 4, all it is an interpolation of the data that's already there. So if you, shot Blackmagic RAW and you shot with like an earlier version of firmware, even if they had Gen 5 or whatever as selectable in the camera for Blackmagic RAW, you're still going to, the data will be the same. The only thing that really changes is the metadata, which is saying to your NLE, like, hey, I want you to use this generation color science instead of this generation color science. Where it does change would be like in ProRes. Like if you shoot ProRes, I'm sure of it because this is how it works. If you shoot ProRes Gen 4 versus Gen 5, there should be a difference between the two. So, yeah. They don't have that yet for the Pocket Cam, so we do not have unless they added it like, after the stream or like right now or today, because I haven't checked. There is not currently a rollout of a Gen 5 to be usable inside the Pocket cameras yet. I'm pretty sure that they have to wait until they release like the full version, like not the beta, but the full version of Resolve before they can give you Gen 5. Because right now in the current like full studio release, they do not have Gen 5 as optional. Does it seem like there are certain colors that are lower contrast and lower saturation, like red, mug, or just straight across? It's really like it's more that certain colors, like so far what I'm seeing is that the blues, the reds, cyans, they are being pulled back toward reality, mapped more for like a Rec 709 render, like what you would expect out of pretty much every other camera is what they're doing. So like before, if you were using Gen 4, you would get like these big spikes in reds and blues and cyans, but with the Gen 5, it really kind of maps them back down to reality. Now, some people, like I said, like them and some people don't, but that's really all that's going on. Let me just show you real quick. We'll use this image as an example. Hold on, how can we do this? The best way really is to show you with ACES because of the way that it maps everything. So I will turn on, let me see if you're going to be able to see this. You should be able to see it. Yeah, okay. Okay, so check this out. Okay, now look down here. Okay, look at it in the waveform. And watch how this particular area is going to be moving compared to the rest of it. Okay, keep your eye on the thing. So we'll go to Gen 5 now. Okay, you see how that changed? Go to Gen 4. Okay, go to Gen 5. And then we'll go to Gen 4. Okay, we'll go to the vector scope. Hopefully you'll be able to see it here. We'll go 2x zoom with it. Okay, Gen 5, watch how this red gets pulled. Okay, and also keep an eye on how the rest of these colors are dealt with. Okay, so it's really just when the this Gen 5 color science says, hey, this red is going out of gamut, we got to pull it back, we got to claw that back toward Rec 709. That's what it appears to be doing. Okay. Gen 4, Gen 5. Okay, so that apparently is what it's doing. Hope that makes sense. I hope that clarifies it, because I can understand why it could be a little confusing. It doesn't look like, you know, again, like here's the skin tones, right? And, you know, the difference between them, it's not, I'll just go to my hand here. It's not obvious that there's like a huge skin tone difference to me. I mean, maybe if you had like a lot of red in your skin or something, but I'm not seeing that much of a difference in skin tone. So you might be asking, you know, well, you know, Tony, you're showing this through ACES. Well, yeah, because you have to have a way of managing your color space in order to see if there's really much of a difference. Like if I just showed like the raw stuff out of here, there's probably going to be a difference, but it's really how it's interpolated at the end of the pipeline that I'm worried about, not so much what is in here. Probably if you're manually doing everything, it's more important. But for me, I'm always spitting out to Rec 709 through either ACES or through, what do you call it? Resolve color management, or just creating a color space transform node at the end here. Sometimes you can do it through here too. So, yeah. Go back there. Okay. Alrighty. Let's see here. Does it seem like there are certain colors? Yeah, you already said that. Basement Coffee. Yeah. Cheap Ass Reviews. Do you do noise reduction as a first node, but last step in workflow? I noticed it's really computationally intensive. Yes, the way that I'll do it, Cheap Ass Reviews, an easy way to do it is you can group all your shots. Like if you want to do it at the very end, you can. Why am I explaining it when I can just show you? I'll show you real quick here. So let's see if I have my muscle memory here. Right click and then add into a new group. We'll call this NR for noise reduction. Okay. And then if you go up here to this little caret, you have group pre-clip, clip, and group post-clip. So for all, if you're doing like the exact same noise reduction for everything, if let's say you did all your grades and you're like, oh crap, I forgot to do my noise reduction, or you do the same noise reduction algorithm every time regardless of the footage, which is usually what I do. I go to group pre-clip, and then you can do your noise reduction in this node, and it will affect all of your nodes. So you don't have to like create, you don't have to like go to this clip and then create a NR node, and then you like go manually turning on and off all these nodes. You can just do noise reduction at the head of all of them with this, okay? So that's the way that I would do it. You can, quickly get your grades done and then throw your noise reduction in here and render everything out. and um, do it. Definitely do it at the beginning of the pipe, because what it does is by putting your noise reduction at the beginning of your pipeline versus the end, if especially if you're doing keying for certain colors or for certain shades, the noise reduction will help smooth out the gradient for the surrounding pixels. So that will help you with your keys. Um, Newt says, "I see. Yeah, I think okay, no problem, man. Probably have to test it out. Yeah, test it out, Newt, with your noise reduction, and it actually is a very important question that you have to ask yourself. It's always dependent on what you're doing. If you're doing like broadcast news stuff, obviously you're going to have to do the noise reduction in camera. And the thing is that like some people don't know this, but you probably do. But I'm just going to say it. Um, every camera needs noise reduction of some kind. Like it's either needing to be super sampled or it needs to have a noise reduction algorithm to deal with whatever, isn't being interpolated correctly. Like every camera has noise, and how it's dealt with either in post by you or in the camera is essential to, how that picture quality is going to end up. So, you should definitely need to know, like how your camera is working with it. If it's like broadcast stuff, usually there's not much you can do about it. And some noise reduction, and I've said this before, like about the Sony cameras, especially like the A7 III. One thing I didn't like about it was, people were saying how good the noise control was in it for doing low light, and although it is pretty good, the noise reduction algorithm is really aggressive. So like especially when you start getting into the higher ISOs, it really gets aggressive in there. So and it can look worse. You can get really good clean footage at higher ISOs out of the pocket cams, 6K, 4K, that can look better because the color retention is better. So that, at least in my opinion, but it obviously is going to depend on the camera. It depends on how that noise reduction is applied, how poorly you're exposing, all of those things. Temporal versus spatial noise reduction video. I could do that. That would be a very simple one to do. Basically, the difference, Cinephile, between temporal and spatial noise reduction is that spatial is going to affect surrounding, like pixels and surrounding pixels, and the larger you do it, the more aggressive it gets. It'll be like a larger group of pixels versus a smaller one. So a 2 will be like 2 pixels, like imagine it. 2 is 2 pixels, and then a 10 would be like 10 pixels. So just think of it that way. And then temporal is over time. It samples between frames. You'll have a choice between like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The more frames that you're using, the more it kind of like looks at it. It like looks at these different frames and determines what's noise. And usually the best way to do noise reduction is to do a little bit of both. For temporal, you'll do, a certain kind of strength for certain, like, and it's usually like noise that kind of dances around like this. And then there's other, if you only do temporal, you'll start to see dots that sit on the frame. And that's where you use the spatial noise reduction to kind of deal with that. Okay, so really that kind of stuff really is something that I think is a lot easier to do and learn about when you get in and you play in it. Like let yourself play in the sandbox with certain footage, some that's shot in low light, some that's shot normal, and do some work with both and see what it does. But I can do a video on it if that will help you. Oh yeah, one last thing on that. Spatial noise reduction is a lot faster than temporal because temporal is sampling from frames and spatial is on each individual frame. So Pablo Sanchez says, give me a second, I gotta get a drink. Pablo says, ran into an issue with Premiere in which I'm trying to export an XML AAF for color, and every time I import in DaVinci and clips don't line up, a clip from way out in the timeline go to the front. That's weird. No effects or anything. I'm very frustrated with that issue. I haven't seen that, so yeah, that's weird. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do about that. Why are you exporting? Okay, I think I know what you mean. There seems to be some weird compatibility issues I've seen that people do with that. I'm kind of old school about doing color where I take the clips and I do a color grade and then I just replace the clips in the file. That's usually how we do it in VFX, so I'm used to doing it that way. No problem, Cheap Ass Reviews. Thanks for being here. Also, guys, if this is helpful to you, I think that there should be Super Chat activated. So if you'd like to make a donation, please feel free to do so. I'm trying to make these streams a lot higher quality because I think a lot of us like to do it. I like to do it, but this helps pay for the cost of doing this kind of thing. So yeah, don't be afraid of using the Super Chat. It should be activated. Currently, that is the only way that I have to support the channel. Did you see the video on YouTube from Hum Crush Productions called The Truth About Blackmagic Design Gen 5 Color Science? There he shows that Gen 5 changed a lot of colors, even yellow. It's strange. Yeah, it's probably because the yellows are a bit are closer to like the reds, and there is, in my opinion, Benjamin, an issue with yellows and how they're handled in Gen 4. And I usually have to pull them back. In Aces, I have to like kind of aggressively pull them back with the LMT. So the colors are, it's usually like this, the colors that get really saturated. Hey, Cinephile, thank you for the super chat. Thanks a lot. That really helps me out and helps us out to have better quality streams. I hope this has been helpful for you. Yeah, so anyway, the reds, yellows, any of those colors that are kind of getting pushed, the reason for that is it's trying to map it more toward Rec 709, and you can always like push the saturation up. If you want the yellow to be more saturated, you can always pull that up. There's no, if you want to change, it's just like Gen 4. If you don't like it to be oversaturated, you can pull it back. The only problem with Gen 4 is that when you're using certain ways of doing your color grade, if you're using Aces, for example, when it's spitting out from the raw tab, when it's spitting out into your timeline, where you're doing all your grades in your node tree, if it's spitting out a bunch of colors that are out of gamut, it becomes very hard to then go back and remap them. So my opinion is it tends to be a lot easier to go from more muted colors and then push the saturation up than it is to go from colors that are out of gamut that you actually cannot resolve those problems sometimes depending on your workflow. Like I said, in Aces, you cannot recover certain colors that get weird. I had that problem when I was doing one of my videos. I posted it. It was at Jemison Park. The whole point of that was to test out a new hi-hat that I bought and use it in conjunction with the tripod head that I bought. And when I went to color grade that in Aces, there were red clipping issues that I could not deal with. Didn't matter what I did. I tried using a number of different methods to fix it, and it didn't work. And then with the one, like I figured out how to deal with the red clipping, but then there was this purple fringing clipping that was creating artifacting in the render that I couldn't get rid of. But with Gen 5, it doesn't do that. So it just kind of it just kind of depends. I'm not sure if it's necessarily strange. It's just a different way of doing it. And you can, of course, go back to Gen 4. I mean, some people like working with the older, like Gen 1 versus Gen 3 for like the Ursas. So for me, Gen 5 is a lot better. Cheap Ass Review says, damn, group pre-clip just changed the game for me. Holy smokes. Yeah, dude. If you don't know how to do the grouping, it can really, really help save you time. Like, let me show you another one, right? Let me show you another one. So, we have these shots all in their clip, right? So another thing that people do is on the end here, they'll throw in they'll throw in this film grain, right? So, I'm just going to call this grain instead of throw it in. Okay. So they'll throw in film grain, but this can get in the way of, this might slow down your machine or whatever it is because of the way that this is rendering. Okay. So if you know that you're going to do something like this, or if you're going to add a certain texture effect, let's say you're going to do, I don't know, 3 different texture effects like this. Let's call that grain. This will be what, like soften, and then this one will be we'll call this like a vignette or something. Like if you decide you want to do this kind of effect at the end, you don't have to do it in each one. Like what people will do is they'll take this and then they'll try to copy paste it to each of these clips, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so instead I'll just get rid of these. Instead, you go to post clip, okay? And then here you do all your fixes that you want to do to everything. If you're gonna, add the same vignette, you put that there. You're gonna put in the grain. You're gonna put in, I don't know, like I call it soften, but there's like a way to add like a halation, or if you want to add, some other kind of blur. Okay, let's add some more. Let's say also you want to do like a desat in the shadows. Like let's say you decide you want to do all these things to add some kind of, let's call this a flavor, okay? So if you're doing all this stuff to each one of these, you can do that all in here, okay? And you can actually create, if you wanted, a whole different set. Oh, okay. So we'll do this parallel. Let's say you're trying to send this to a client, and you're like, hey, I've got flavor A, and it's this film look thing over here, and you can even have your LUT in there if you want. And then over here you have, we'll put this in another compound node. You call this flavor B, and you can just have these two, throw this in here, render, throw this in here, do it, do a separate render, and there you go. You've got your 2 different flavors, and you can have them take a look. So I kind of like it when you can see some of this stuff in motion, because a grain in motion looks different than grain on a still. Okay, so yeah, and like I said, you can put like a LUT in here too. If we go in, let's actually do the other one because we kind of made that weird. But if we go in here, you can do this, and this can be like your LUT. You can either put it here or you can put it here, wherever you want to, wherever you want to put this kind of thing. Definitely put your LUT after the grain, but I'm not sure what you're doing here. But you can do it like this. Okay. So this grouping can really save you a lot of time. Okay, like I do it all the time. Like you can put your ACES transform in the post clip, and I think I have a video that shows that too. Raghav says, thanks for answering my question. I recently did a music video that was shot on Alexa X SXT. We used cheap tube lights, not Quasar, and the gamut red channels were clipped completely. How do you work around yourself if you're in a situation like that? Is it the CRI of the light, or how digital sensors in general react to the light, especially red channels? The thing is that you have your sensor, and it reads the different light wavelengths, and red has this, especially like the way that it's displayed, tends to have more of like this ugly effect to it than some other colors. When you're dealing with like a RGB, like a Bayer sensor that has red, green, and blue pixels, there's twice as many green, someone's gonna have to correct me. There's more green pixels than there are red and blue. If I remember correctly, it's like red's the slowest, blue's the fastest light, or whatever it is. And it's just that when you have that, you have like your RGB channels, and the red channel tends to clip, or the blue channel tends to clip faster than the green channel. So that's usually why that happens. If it's like a certain color, that's how it will. That's why you'll see usually like clipping in certain channels, but you won't see them in other. That's why if you're working on set, especially if they're working with an SXT or anything else, like you should be able to see like an RGB parade, which will show you like because like the waveform monitor is all great. Wait a minute, am I going to be able to show you guys this also in here? Just give me a second to see if I can do this. Okay, let's go to, yeah, okay. Just give me a second so I can show you. Yeah, okay. Okay. I'll show you this. So this kind of shows you, if you look down here, this is the RGB parade, okay? And in Resolve, it's going to show you your luma values, which is like an average. And then you're going to have your red, your green, and your blue channels. If you look at the red, you can see how this is like way up here. And then the green channel is like kind of chilling here, and then the blue channel is a bit higher. So red just tends to have these issues a lot more often. You can see how different they are, right? Like here's the luma, right? And then here's your red, your green, and your blue channels, and they are different. So depending on the kind of color that's going on with your lights, you'll have certain things happen. In some cameras, the blues get treated worse than like the reds, and other ones it's reds worse than the blues, and some of them they're the same. It all depends, and a lot of it has to do with how much information it can even capture, and the codec, and all kinds of things. So I know that the ARRI gamut is a lot smaller than other gamuts, so that might be one of the issues, and it just didn't map it right. But I don't know because I didn't see the footage. So, but usually with LEDs or with lights in general, you're gonna have some kind of issue. And really, what it comes down to is how you deal with that in post. That can make or break it at that point. So, like just for an example, let's reset this. So. Yeah, so if you even look here, we're going to go into ACES, go from ACES CCT to Rec 709, and we will use ACES AP1 and ACES CCT. So you can see in Gen 4 how this LED is being mapped. It's like super ugly. But with Gen 5, it maps it differently. So you don't have as obvious of a problem. So it's not only what the camera's capturing, but also how it's being interpolated that matters with this. The more information you have, like here's a chromacity, like this Rec 709. I hope that this is obvious. Can you guys even, what if I do that? Let me see if you guys can even see this real quick. Yeah, you can't see my pop-out windows, unfortunately. Okay, I'll have to figure out how to do that. Okay. So unfortunately, I can't show you the pop-out. It won't show it to you. But if you look down here, this Rec 709 triangle here, it's very, very small. Let's go to something else. Let's go to Rec 2020. Oh, it won't show the difference. Oh, that's right. I gotta go here. We'll go to, let's see, that should show me. Yeah. So Rec 2020, this huge, huge triangle like this, very, very big. If we go to ARRI, it's like this. And then if we go to, let's see, this one, Pocket 4K, it will have a different gamut. So, however your gamut is, that it was mapped, it was either mapped incorrectly or something. So, and sometimes there's not a whole lot that you can do about that. Um, So the other thing that you were saying is the CRI of the light, or how digital sensors in general react to the light. So the CRI, I don't know how good those light sources are as far as it. Um, the uh, I don't really use those kinds of lights, so it's hard for me to really comment on those. But I would imagine if you're using like an Alexa, you should have been able to get better lighting. But the CRI really is about how well the light source is able to represent what you're really seeing. So, if I remember correctly, it's in reference to sunlight, like sunlight being 100, and then if it was 95, it'd be like 95% of what the sunlight does or whatever. So if I remember correctly, that's where they get the numbers from. But basically, like the CRI is just how well it represents the actual colors that are there. The worse the CRI is, the worse the colors are going to look, but it doesn't necessarily make it where there's clipping in the channels. Like it doesn't really work that way. The channel clipping is usually when the sensor is getting so saturated with a color or with light or whatever that it's almost like it's overloaded and doesn't know what to do with it. That's why you'll get clipping issues. It's just like outside of the realm of what it can really record. So that's why you'll end up with those problems. So with the color saturation clipping, usually it's in like the red channel or the blue channel and less in the green channel, because the way that the light works is just, for whatever reason, it tends to clip those channels more. There's probably people who are engineers who can more clearly explain it to you than I do. I just know that even when I'm shooting photography, when you're using like a histogram, or you're using even a waveform monitor that is, if the waveform monitor is only like the luma values and you can't see an RGB parade and you can't see all the individual channels to see what's going on, you can accidentally clip like the red channel or the blue channel, because the averages are what you're going to be seeing in that luma interpretation. So maybe the average of the highlights are around like 95 IRE, so you're like, oh, that should be fine, but in real life it was like one of them was down here and the other one was way above 100. So it's like, you have to know your camera, and then the better thing is to use an RGB parade, or to have a reliable metering method. Usually what people do is that even if they're using like a DSLR or whatever that doesn't have the best video monitors available for monitoring your luma, they will test it to know, like, okay, I'll have zebras set at like 85 because I know I won't clip any of the channels at 85, whereas if I put it at 90, the red channel gets clipped or the blue channel gets clipped or whatever. So I hope that makes sense. Benjamin says, can you update your video to the new Gen 5, the BMPCC 4K Easy Neutral looks? That won't really make a whole lot of a difference, because like you can map the values correctly using that method. And right now, there's Gen 5 is not released in the actual studio. It's only in beta. So I don't really want to jump ahead like that. So how they kind of work with it will probably change. And then also there's no color space transform information yet for Gen 5, so you can't really do it that way. So like right now with the beta, if you want to use Gen 5, the way that makes the most sense to me is either like manual grading or through using ACES. So if you try to do it with that method, it's just not going to work. You need a LaCroix sponsorship, yeah. I'd be all right with that. I think I like LaCroix. Um, Photographic Element says top layer is blue and green, bottom layer is green and red. I'm not sure what you mean. Photographic Element says Quasar Light said once the best color from LEDs is to gel them, set to tungsten, then gel. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, if you use those, that's probably good. Zeke says, I'm late to the chat, so are they sending out Gen 5 color science for the 4K? My understanding is that if you have one of the newer cameras, you will be eventually getting Gen 5. And I can show you guys more stuff with the Gen 5 if you're late, if everybody's okay with that. But the thing is that it's only really available in the beta right now. So I wouldn't, my opinion is don't do any real work in beta programs because you don't know what the other problems are and you don't know how the program is going to change from that beta to the actual release. So once I'm sure that once they're ready to actually roll out the Gen 5 color science and Resolve with the full update, I'm confident that you'll see very, very soon after, or at the same time even, a rollout to certain cameras that can use a Gen 5. Because really all it is adding that to the metadata. That's really all it would be. And then, well, I guess also for ProRes is, like for ProRes recordings, adding that mapping to the ProRes. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't like do that around the same time that they roll it out in the real actual release studio versions. So yeah. So I mean that's most of what I have to say about the Gen 5 and Gen 4 color science. I think it's a good step forward for their color science, to be honest. I know that somebody had mentioned the Hum Crush Productions video where it seemed like he didn't really like the changes. I do, because I can actually use that color science in any I can actually use that color science within any pipeline that I choose. If I'm working in a production that I want to use ACES in for whatever reason, I know that I can use the Pocket 4K with ACES without a problem, at least so far that I'm seeing. Gen 4, no, I would not do it. And I can actually create a video, I guess, on the, I have like a little grouping of those videos where I'm using ACES with the Pocket 4K, and the Gen 5 would solve a lot of the problems I was having. Like I'm not seeing any of the same issues that I was having in ACES, so at least they're headed the right way with that. But yeah, I guess I'll just show anybody who's coming in late. Zeke says, since updating to the new Resolve, it won't boot unless I open it up with compatibility troubleshoot program in Windows. That's weird. I'm not. Yeah, I didn't have that problem. I just opened it and it wasn't an issue. So I'll hit up Resolve. So I'll just kind of go over this again just in case. And if you have questions, please let me know, because that way we can look at that together. So let's get back into Rec 709 here. Okay. And we will fix this. Okay. So just to kind of recap on this, Gen 4 and Gen 5 are quite a bit different. Gen 4, just look at the waveform monitor and how they respond. This is kind of the extreme test to see if the camera and the color science can deal with these LED lights. Is blue and cyan, and then red over here and orange. There's some red up here too. So it's a very short clip, but So going between Gen 4 and Gen 5, you can see how differently they map the contrast and then also how they're mapping the colors. So I'll just zoom in. And this is, oh, I have this on. Never mind. Okay, let's try this over again. Gen 4, okay. Let's go back out. Sorry, guys. Had that activated. So Gen 4 looks like this. Gen 5 looks like this without any corrections, okay? So what I'm going to do, though, and this is why this is over here, is I'm going to turn on ACES, and then I'm going to put the color science into ACES AP1 and ACES CCT so you can see what's going on. Okay, so in Gen 4, we have this, and I'll zoom in because this is where it's most obvious. Just if you look in here, you can see this really horrible blue clipping kind of issue. Let's see if we pull the saturation back if it's still there. Okay, so I'm going to zoom way in. So the reason why this desaturation node is here is to show where there's problems with the gamut clipping that can't be fixed in the pipe here. And you'll notice that when you use ACES, this is really the only way to do your grading. Okay, you can't do anything in here because it's all being done with the color space and gamut controls here, right? So this dark blotchy mess is colors that are out of gamut that cannot be corrected. So when we go from Gen 4 to Gen 5, you can see, you know, not only is this mapped differently, but the that splotchy black area is now gone. Okay, so this is what it looked like before. This is what it looks like with Gen 5. Okay, so we'll zoom out so you get more of an idea of what this looks like. Gen 4, not sure how it looks in the compression, but blotchy mess. Gen 5, and it looks way better. Okay, then we'll deactivate the desaturation and just kind of go back and forth between the two. Okay, so you can see how much of a difference that is. So this is, I believe, what they were trying to correct in Gen 5 more than anything. Okay, and the if I go to my face here, some people were like, the reason why I talk about skin tones with this is because some people were saying that the skin tones look better, and they just don't. Like, I'm using ACES, so this is all color managed. Okay, the skin tones don't look any different in my opinion. I guess if you're doing everything manually, they might, but if you're using color management, it doesn't appear that there's really any difference in the skin tones. What is different is how these very saturated colors like this red are being mapped. Okay. And then in this one, we'll do the same thing with an ACES transform, go from CCT to Rec 709. And we'll go ACES AP1, ACES CCT. So we'll get where there's some taillights right there. And between Gen 4 and Gen 5, when you go back and forth between the two of them, again, this is going through ACES, there's no apparent obvious difference between these. But when we zoom in here, there's more of an obvious difference between how these colors are being mapped in Gen 4 and Gen 5. Okay, so I don't have all the shots that I had with the color card. I haven't had the time to do one with my own face, but the other ones with a color card with other people where, you know, I'm not going to put them on broadcast like that without their permission, so I just didn't have access to that. But with the color card, the most obvious differences were in blues, reds, and yellows, kind of, just kind of. So yellows weren't as affected, the general yellows as affected as red. So here's a yellow over here, let's just see. Gen 5, Gen 4, and then Gen 5. So yeah, the yellows get pushed back slightly, but not in a super obvious way. Okay. Okay. All right. Um, okay. Uninstalled, installed, downgraded, nothing. Seems no one is asking questions, so I'm just gonna. Yeah, keep going, Zeke. What do you think of the special effects abilities compared to Adobe and the software you used in your time in special effects? So, Zeke, um, I really, really hate After Effects because it's layer based. There's a lot of reasons, but one of the main issues is that it's layer based, and I'm a node based user. Like I'm used to Nuke from doing visual effects. So when I was doing work there, when I was doing like technical directing and that kind of stuff, I really started to love Nuke, and we were using like After Effects and stuff like that before, but when we switched over to Nuke, it was like a 9-day difference. It made way more sense. So I'm a very visual person, so the node-based structure is so it's clear what's going on, and you can kind of group things into different places. And in visual effects, like with a Nuke script, it looks totally different than what you would do in like After Effects. With Nuke, you can actually take clumps of nodes, you can organize them in a very specific way that makes them easier to look at, and you can kind of like take other people's scripts that they've created through their node structure and combine them together with merge nodes. So I'm more used to looking at compositing done that way. So the fact that Fusion in Resolve is the same kind of workflow as Nuke, or like the free version of Nuke, which is Natron, that works way better for me. So I can more clearly see what I'm doing and go and find where there's issues with the composite and make the fixes there. So I haven't done anything where I like imported different scripts in Fusion, but I'm using Fusion more now in Resolve because I'm being requested to do a lot more compositing, and I kind of want to do the composite and everything all in Resolve. If I can get out of Adobe and just do everything in Resolve, not only is that going to be cheaper, but also it can all kind of take place in the same project file if you want, or it can all take place all in the same program. So I don't like how Adobe kind of like has everything splintered off into these different things. So like my editing is going to be different than my compositing, which is going to be different than my audio editing and all these other things. So I kind of like the idea of integrating everything together in Resolve. So I'm not really a big fan of the way that Adobe does it. I think that in After Effects, what I like about it is that if you're doing very simple animations, it can be really easy. But for people who are very, very familiar with node-based structures and node-based compositing and other compositing programs, After Effects is kind of like frustrating for some people. But the good thing about it is that if you do have After Effects, if you're using like subscription plans, it's kind of like, is ubiquitous the right word? Like everybody kind of has After Effects. So when someone makes a template that they're selling as part of a subscription that you have to like Storyblocks or Getty or anything like that, if you're able to pull an After Effects file, you're going to be able to just replace a logo or replace text or whatever it is, so you get the same kind of animation. I would say that for the animator, it can be a lot harder. For the compositor, it can be a lot harder. Like, man, when I was doing tracking in After Effects, like basic tracking stuff is really annoying. Like if you've ever used Nuke, it's pretty easy. You figure it when the first time you figure it out, it can be a little weird, but afterward it's so much easier than doing anything with tracking and doing like creating tracked mats or whatever, like any kind of compositing stuff, like using tracking in After Effects. It just is annoying to me. I don't have any other way to say it. I know I probably said the same thing like 3 times, but I'm just not a big fan of After Effects because of that. And there's some other things that really annoy me about Adobe products, where like the same shortcut keys don't do the same thing between the different programs, or they operate in a different way. One thing I really like about Adobe is when you need to make a keyframe, it'll put it like at the beginning or the end of something. It will like put the keyframe in a place where you can't click on it. It's really great. Anyway, piggyback question, Fusion. I'm learning more and more how to use Fusion. It works very similarly to, um, it works similar, like the way that the node-based structure is set up. It's very similar to something like Nuke and all that. The only thing that I really don't like about Resolve in general is I'm not seeing how to organize with like those what the heck are they called? Backgrounds that you can create in Nuke that organize everything. So has node-based been around for as long as layer-based software? No, no. Or has it? Is it a new thing? I think it's a lot newer, but I'm not going to say it's all old hat at this point or whatever. But node-based is a more visual way of seeing it. Like layer-based is how Premiere operates. It's how like timelines in Resolve, like when you're in the edit page and you kind of like layer video files on top of each other. That's how that works. Like video editing, it makes more sense to me because you have things like on top of each other. But with compositing, it's a little different because when you merge stuff together, you're going to do different. You're doing it in different ways. Sometimes the way that it's composited will have like completely different effects. You don't want to really layer it on top. And then when you need to find something in a layer-based program, it can be like having to dig through all these layers to find that one thing that you need. Whereas in node-based, usually things are if you have a script that's done right, things are grouped together properly. So, yeah, Motion VFX Nuke is expensive, but if you don't want to pay for that, get Natron. Natron is open effects. How did I get into visual effects? I actually had no interest in visual effects. I worked. I was in when I was at university. I was working at a news channel, and I worked there for several years. And I realized that there wasn't really a future in it for me. Unfortunately, even though I love the work, the kind of hours that you had to work and what you'd have to do to succeed in it, at least when it was non-union, was not what I wanted to do. Like basically, in order for me to move up and get paid more, I was going to have to work for free for like months on end in doing jobs that required a payment of like $4 more per hour up to $10 more per hour. And I wasn't willing to do that. Like I was doing work and training and all those things to do news editing, which is a totally different way of editing than doing narrative editing. And at the end of it all, they just ended up hiring a friend of theirs anyway. Like that's what happened. Like I did all this work to try to get the position, and then like the guy who was hiring just hired their friend. That's literally what happened to me. So there was no way I was going to do that again, and I wanted to do like I learned how to run the switchboard. They wouldn't let me run the switchboard without paying me. Like they're like, oh well, you have to basically do this switch operating for like 6 months without getting paid more in order for us to pay you what it would be. But then you would have to like apply for it and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that because it doesn't seem right. So I saw that wasn't going to work. I saw that there was another job opportunity for a visual effects company that was opening, and it was all using like proprietary software. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just like try to do that. So yeah, and I ended up in the quality assurance department. And then basically what we would do is we would get masks from an outsourced facility, and then we would fix it and then send it out to depth artists, and then they would do fixes from there. So like that's basically how I started it. And what I like to do more than anything was in the management side of it. Like when I was there, like we basically ended up changing the whole way that we did the pipeline around moving quality assurance from the end of pipes to the beginning of pipes. And doing even that can completely change the way that the success of your company. Like it can completely change how much money you can make when you move where quality assurance checks happen. It's about looking at where your bottlenecks are and like figuring out how to change it. So I really like doing that. I actually really love that job. I was doing jobs that nobody wanted to do, and I actually really, really liked it. But there was another situation there. Like uh, for that, I was leading a QA team. Basically, everything that would go out to the outsourced facilities, I'd have like me or my team would check it over, and then when it came back, like we were in charge of making sure that everything was done appropriately. And I would have meetings with the leads and with the other VFX soups on how to best prepare to get our compositing done the right way with as little problems as possible. So throughout that entire time, I was doing like, other jobs, like even before and after I was doing other jobs that were like contract work. So, so do you mostly work as a video shooter and editor now for work, or is that a side thing? My main job is I do video producing for learning content. So that's like my bread and butter. That's my regular day job. So basically, when we have clients that are for like universities, and then they send us, it's mostly higher learning. So say a program needs to have course introduction videos or videos that explain a specific thing. I always think of the Krebs cycle for some reason, but if it's like some specific thing that people need to learn and they want a video about it, they will contact our department, and then we work with them to create the content, organize it, and then we work with them to develop scripts and develop the actual video. And then right now during COVID, we don't shoot it, but we used to shoot basically the talking head portion, and then we use stock images, stock video, that kind of thing, and graphics to kind of overlay and make it look nicer. So that is mostly what I do. And the last video that I just turned in a V1 today is for a marketing video for a summit. So we're also, I guess, doing marketing stuff now too. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff there. And then for the side, I do other video production stuff. So I try to hover around doing stuff for educational facilities or for science labs and that kind of thing, because I like that client base a lot. I think that they're very appreciative, and they're also really good clients mostly to work with. There's sometimes some issues with faculty where they just don't understand how much time it takes to produce the kind of content that looks good and will educate people better than some other content that they might be thinking of. So that can be hard, but that's the kind of stuff that I do now. And I love doing it. So I don't think I've hated my jobs much, except for when I felt like I was being taken advantage of. That and also when I was working in VFX, it just looked like it was going to go downhill. Like the reason why I quit doing visual effects was because I saw that it was a race to the bottom. We were told in a meeting, like this big meeting, they were like, "Oh, we're going to be expanding to Canada. It's going to be so great." And I was like, this is not an expansion. This is a move. Like they want to move to Canada to take advantage of the credits that they have there. Like if you work in video production out there, you get to have like tax incentives to work there. But it didn't really pan out for them. Like they thought, I think. But I saw it was like the writing was on the wall. I was one of the people that they wanted to move with them. Like they basically closed down the facility in San Diego and moved up to New York, or not New York. My God, Los Angeles. And I was in New York. They moved up to Los Angeles, and I was just like, no, like I don't want to live in LA. Like if you live in San Diego, it's kind of hard to go to LA. So I just didn't want to do that. But yeah, that's the thing that sucks about working in visual effects, is that there's not a lot of help for the workers, and you end up working a lot of hours. The people are awesome, and then it's the business side of it that just ends up ruining things. Like that's what happened to me in news, really, and then that's what happened, for visual effects. I mean, I'm serious. Like I really loved working in the news. Like I love floor directing. I love doing it. And then they were talking about automating the cameras, and they were going to get rid of the crew. And then in order to get the different jobs, I was going to have to do all these things for free, and I was just not willing to do that. So it's just, That's just how things are. It might be different in different countries and in different areas, but that's how it was where I was. Zeke says, "That's good, steady work. You must learn a lot about random subjects just by having to put the content in those videos. The Krebs cycle is so intricate and confusing." Yeah, dude. Like, like I was saying, I don't know, a week or so ago that I was seeing from a particular person on YouTube that was saying that, you don't learn entrepreneurialism and you don't learn like how to be an entrepreneur. You don't learn how to start your own business. They just, school just teaches you how to be a worker. And I'm like, that's not the case. I know because I work on programs where they teach you how to be an entrepreneur. I work on programs where they teach you how to start your own business, and I see what they're saying, and it's very similar stuff, like what this individual is saying. So it's like, so I do learn a lot of different things. It's usually the interpretations of information that I learn about. Hey DJ, good to see you. I was just talking about when we were working visual effects in San Diego and what happened there. So I know you, DJ and I will spend like hours talking about that kind of stuff. Like both working at the station, like DJ and I both worked at the news station together. We worked at a VFX station together, and we work together now. So yeah, we have a lot of the same experiences. Um, Steve says scientists are great to deal with. They're like artists, like a big chunk in our industry, dude. Scientists are awesome to work with because they are very excited about their stuff. And the thing that is kind of sad is that, and it's just that the way that scientists communicate, about things is really kind of old fashioned. And they're like right now, at least with the people that I'm working with, there is a push to modernize the way that they talk to people so that it's more clear what they're doing. For example, what a lot of people in the United States seem to not know is that like when a drug is created or say a new procedure is being done and that kind of stuff, that all begins with research scientists. Research is where all of that begins. And tax money and all of our money kind of goes into that research. And then when the research is done, they'll produce an article or they'll produce this research that is then shown to people, and then for-profit companies often will, latch on to that research and then create a drug or someone will create a procedure that's based on this research, and then they want to be paid all the money for it, and then these research facilities don't get anything. That happens a lot. And so, they need funding in some way. If they're not going to create research, because it's hard to say like, with the way that we have things, it's hard to say a research facility is entitled to all this money from like a drug or whatever, but they need to be able to get funding in order for anybody to produce any of the drugs or procedures that we have. So, that, and I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings about what scientists do and how they, produce work. And when you talk to them, you gotta, like, me as video producer, I have to go like, okay, you're using a lot of words that I don't understand. Okay, so let's backtrack and let's like try to explain this to people as if they're not scientists. And that's the hard thing, is that they're so used to communicating to scientists about what science they're doing that it makes it very difficult for people who aren't scientists to understand where they're coming from, what they're trying to do, why they need to be funded, all that kind of stuff. It's actually really important. Like I think that the modernizing the way that educational facilities, the way that scientists speak, the way that mathematicians teach, that's another huge one. Like for me, that's why I like doing education, is because we can try to find new ways to explain things to people that they might not have done. For me, it's not like I hated learning math, but what I hated was the way that math was taught. The way that math was always taught to me was like this really like heady, what's the right word? Like this, you had to imagine what you were doing. And like when I talked to my wife, who's both of her parents are doctors in math, she's like, oh, the reason why you use these different, sine, tangents, and all these other things is because she would draw a picture and say, this is where all these things lie on this shape. This is what you're trying to find. And I'm like, dude, my teachers never taught me that. Not to my recollection. When I was in university and we were, what was it? It was calculus for life sciences because I was going to be an MD, which was not what I really wanted to do. The way that it was taught is like, okay, here's a bunch of math problems on the board, solve them, and they would just like do all the numbers on the board. I didn't even know what you were supposed to be doing. So with using media and having other people that are, artists such as myself or whoever else, having everybody working together to go, okay, let's try to explain this in a way that makes sense to a regular person trying to learn the content. You get people who can, you basically get it where people can learn the content a lot easier. So, I mean, that's kind of why I really like doing what I'm doing, because I feel like I'm actually doing something that's important. I get it. I'm not, poo-pooing anything else like making commercials or whatever, but that really is why I like doing what I'm doing. Not only are the clients awesome to work with, and even the difficult ones, like even the difficult people that I've found that are faculty, they're no worse than other clients that I've worked with, so it's not even like it's a worse situation with them. And most of the clients that I do work with are very appreciative. They're very helpful. They're very nice to me, and everybody else that I work with. So that's the majority of them. So got about 12 minutes left. So let's see. Yeah, DJ says, help to create 2 studios abroad to help with capacity, which meant to replace San Diego artists. Yeah. So what DJ is talking about is that he basically helped, like, because the idea was that, these other outsourced facilities were going to help us, and we were like growing, and then it ended up being that it was a big replacement scheme. The whole idea of it was to actually get rid of our friends as workers, and to have other people do the job that were in basically a more desperate situation, which is generally how it works. That's why I say it's a race to the bottom in the VFX field. Until workers and even countries start taking more control of that, I don't see how it'll stop. It'll just keep going down to the basement where people can't really make a living. Zeke says, I hear Blackmagic are allowing companies to use their raw codec in their cameras like Sigma FP. I don't think it's that they're allowing them to use the raw codec in their cameras. It's that Blackmagic Design is willing to help them generate their own version of Blackmagic Raw, because each one has to be like, there's a partial demosaic that's done basically in the process before it gets out. So Blackmagic Design does have to help in some way to make that happen, because this is my understanding that BRAW is open source as far as making it where like Premiere or After Effects or whatever the heck you're using can decode it. So they make it easier for anybody to create like a decoder or to play Blackmagic Raw. But from my understanding, it's not the same thing with encoding. I think Blackmagic Raw is having to do the encoding side of it, and they're not allowing it so far internally, which is what I want. They are allowing it externally. So I would even, let's say Panasonic came out with a new EVA, because their EVA 1 has an external Blackmagic Raw capability through the recorder, the Blackmagic Design recorders that they have. But I want that internal. I don't really want to use an external recorder. I would really like to have it internal. Steve says, I agree. I did a teaching program on communication for scientists through our Science Academy. Totally agree. This with interview skills. Yeah. Steve, the really hard thing about working with scientists is like the interview process, because a lot of them are like, they get really like dug into the specifics and all that stuff, and like it's good if the video is for like other scientists to watch, it's like totally fine. But a lot of times they get in their own head, and you got to kind of break them out of it. Like that's where your skill as the interviewer, you got to go like, hold on, wait, what does this mean? Like, explain what this word means, explain what this process is, explain what this procedure is. And if you can get them to do that, and in like layman's terms, essentially, it's a lot more helpful to an audience that is going to be like a regular person. So I yeah, I think yeah, yeah, it's good work. Like, and you really will, like, if you do the work, like, you really will feel like you're making a difference. Like, you really do. To me, it's a totally different feeling doing that versus doing like a marketing video for, a car or something. Blackmagic Video Assist external recorder. Yeah, photographic elements. That's what you need in order to get BRAW with these external, with these other cameras. Steve says it's diabolical the way they teach math, science in schools. Yeah, I agree. I think you're in Australia, but in the United States, the way that math is taught is so difficult for people to understand. And the thing is that for me, mathematics in the public school level, I'm not sure how it's done in private schools or whatever, but at the public school level, it needs to be done where, like, not only is it a little slower so people can kind of appreciate math and appreciate like what you can do with it and what you're trying to do, but it also needs to be less abstract. We need to have more pictures. Like, I know that sounds maybe dumb. It's not like, you're reading a book and you need more pictures to know what's happening in the story. I'm not saying that, but for math, it can be very difficult for people to figure it out when there's nothing for them to really look at other than, okay, sine, tan, this, and, and you're just like solving for X and Y and Z, and you don't really understand why you're doing it. Like, what, people start asking that question, well, why am I doing this? Why should I have to do it this way? Why can't I do this? When will I ever use this in my life? One of the stories I like to tell is friend of mine, close friend of mine, didn't really like math at all. And then they were like math as far as like geometry and all those things. And then they were doing work on coordinating a wedding. And they really wanted to do this wedding coordination work. And they had basically an irregular looking floor because there was like a pool. And then there was like this irregular way that the backyard was set up for where the reception was going to take place. And they were able to use, like, they actively wanted to use geometry to figure out where to put circular tables, like round tables, where rectangle tables were going to go. Had to calculate how far or how close, I should say, the chairs needed to be so that people could get in and out of their spots. And they were able to do it. They did it perfectly. And the fact that, someone who maybe in school had such a hard time with something like that versus when you actually apply it and you can see what you're trying to do and you're in a situation where, you're the hero. This is a story thing. This is what I talk about with creating full programs where, you're the hero of the story, the learner, and you have a job you have to do. Your job is to coordinate this wedding, or your job is to save the big account. Even it could be like a total narrative speaking, it could be totally like lame and old and pretty boilerplate. But when you put this into the learning curriculum, it becomes a lot more fun to learn how to do things. Learning how to do accounting work where you're actually trying to do something important would probably be more fun. And when there's like actual ways that you can engage with it, that you don't have to use your imagination, you can actually see the results of what you're doing. It's very much like how gaming is done. And I think, like, for especially the difficult ones, like, I'm not talking about like art where you're creating something with clay or you're, painting and all those things. Usually people kind of get that. But when it's something really abstract like mathematics where people have such a hard time with it, you need to find a new way to teach it. And I think that could be a really good way for us to be actively involved in learning, and use not only those narrative skills that you learn, but also use media to engage the learner in a way that you can't do with a lecture. So Zeke says some teachers sometimes don't understand there are different ways people learn, like visual, kinesthetic. Exactly, Zeke. That's the thing that teachers are learning. Like, the more faculty that I engage with, the more we kind of talk about those things and how to engage the learner in a number of ways. Like, we'll talk and they'll say, oh, well, I want to just do this video and it'll just be me talking. And I go, well, hold on a second. Why don't we, for these major topics, we can have visuals and use visuals to help explain those things. Because for me, as a visual learner, when I'm, say I'm taking a test or whatever, which is usually what you're trying to do is get people to pass a test. But if you really want them to retain the knowledge, if they're a visual learner, they need something that their mind engages with. And if we have like, a certain word and you associate it with a picture that they'll remember, then they'll understand that later. So that way, not only is the learner more engaged and thinks it's more fun to learn, but then also they can pass the test easier as well. But LA has a 405 and the 110, yeah. Imagine the GH5 with Blackmagic Raw. That would be an amazing grab and go shooting camera. Yeah, dude. I was thinking like the if they had like the Sony A7S, was it 3 or whatever? If that had Blackmagic Raw, that would be great. I can't imagine that. GH5 with Raw would be awesome too. Yeah, that would be wonderful. The GH5 would be, I think, a little bit better for grab and go because the lenses you can get are so much smaller than the Sony. But yeah, for sure. Blackmagic Raw is a great codec. Math only makes sense at high math differential equations. Well, photographic elements, the only time that like math really made a whole lot of sense to me as far as like the real world view of it was when I was in college and I took like the easiest class I could possibly do. And it was like basically a math appreciation class, super easy. And learning about how like math works with like how pineapples grow. Like how the spines are on the pineapple grow in a certain way, and you can predict it based on math. Then I had learned this before in art, but we talked about like the golden rectangle and the golden mean and how that works in mathematics and being able to predict things based on that, and how it also is like our ideal rectangle, for example, in math. Like the Vitruvian Man has like a ton of them if you've ever seen it. So, in fact, let me see if I can get that for you. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. There's an article. Yeah, here we go. So I'll send you guys this, just in case you have no idea what I'm talking about. But, stuff like that, it's all, it's based around math, and that's, something that's even helpful for narrative filmmakers using, using all these different like mathematical equations that can help you create a piece that you might not have thought of as far as compositionally. So same thing goes with like color values. It's based on math. Your eyes can see it, and if you understand how the math works and you understand how all that works, even if you're colorblind, you can make a pleasing image based on just the mathematics of it and looking at scopes and looking at how the numbers react. So yeah, math is pretty important. It took me a long time to figure that out. Like, it's not like I failed math a bunch, but Zeke says, I hear emotion ties in heavy with learning. Apparently you retain more knowledge if you're in a positive mood environment. Yeah, that's also important. Stream's going to be over in like a minute here, but just this last thought, and then we'll call it a night. But that's another thing that's really important, that as a kid you don't know, and in my opinion the school needs to do a really good job of making sure that kids are in the right environment. I think as adults it's the same thing, but just so you understand, with kids in school, if they have a bad meal, like if you go to class and you have a kid who didn't eat breakfast because their family can't afford it, or like the parents aren't helping to make sure that the kid's having a nutritional breakfast and haven't taught them to have that, and don't have like a meal program at school, that kid's probably not going to do very well. Because how can you pay attention if you're hungry the whole time, right? If you have a kid that can't sleep because it's too loud at the house, with whatever the hell's going on, and they are struggling to just fall asleep at night, how are they supposed to not fall asleep during school? So, these are serious issues that happen in the public schools in the United States that they're often not taken into account. Even just the meal stuff, like for lunch, if you have kids who don't have a lunch, man, they're probably not going to do very well. They're just probably not going to do very well. It's not that it happens all the time like that, but they could do a lot better if they had a proper diet, if they had, food, if they had, all that kind of stuff. It would really, really help them out. Thank you, Zeke, for the $5. Thanks a lot, man. That's very, very generous of you. Thank you so much. So yeah, like emotions, like, your diet plays a lot into that. If kids are like hopped up on sugar before class, that could be a problem. If they're having, behavioral issues, it's usually something deeper. For adults, it's the same thing. Like, we think that all that stuff happens with kids, and for adults, it's the same thing. If you have adults who are trying to go to like night school or go to university while they're working a job for 40 hours a week or even 60 hours a week, and they're trying to get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, they're going to have certain barriers to their education or difficulty based on stress, based on not having enough time, based on not having enough sleep, all kinds of things. So the good thing about the group that I work for is that we account for those things. We do everything that we can to provide the services that they need in order to be successful. And every university, every public school, every private school, every school or learning facility needs to be aware of all that stuff. It's really weird because sometimes like people will ignore or deny that those things happen. Like, they will deny that there's a difference between, someone who doesn't have to work a job and someone who does have to work a job, and both of them trying to get the same degree. Just based on that, it's when you take it one to one. Obviously, there's other things, okay? But when even just something like that, you have to understand that the person who's working those 40 hours, they're going to have certain issues that the person who's not working won't likely have. So, again, there's like intelligence and there's like their work ethic and all those other things. But these are all the things that, those are already understood. But then there's all these less understood issues with it. And, just imagine if you're a kid who has a poor diet, you're hopped up on sugar, and someone's trying to teach you how to, solve the area of a rectangle, and you just don't give a damn because you don't understand when you'd ever need to do that. And you also, you're having other issues that you're dealing with at home. You're going to have a bad time. So anyway, I could go on and on about talking about education. But we're a little bit past the mark, the 8:30 mark. So I will see you all next week. I'm going to try to do something special. We'll see if it happens. If not, don't worry about it. I'll still have something. But yeah, thank you all for coming. I appreciate. Thank you, Zeke and Cinephile, for sending in your donations. That's very generous of you. And I will catch y'all next week. Have a good week.